response, right, from him?
Yeah, no response.
Okay. So if he joins, then I will introduce him that time and pull him into the flow.
Sure, sir.
Right.
Sure.
And we said 90 minutes, right? I mean, up to 12:30 maximum, but you know.
Yeah, sir. Yeah.
If you can lift yourself up a bit, it will be nice, or tilt. Yeah, that's good. Yes, good. Okay, I'm ready.
So good morning, everybody. On behalf of FICCI, I would like to invite you all for the Science Meets Industry series, the session on blockchain, underlying technology, and vertical applications. So thank you all the panelists for joining us and all the participants who are viewing us using the YouTube link. So we'll start, and for today's session, the moderator would be Dr. Aloknath Dey, who is the SVP and CTO, Samsung R&D Institute India. And post the session, we'll take the questions from YouTube and post it on the Zoom, and then the panelists can answer it. So Dr. Dey, over to you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Nitin. And good morning to all. Thanks to FICCI again for organizing this particular session, which is called Science Meets Industry. And this is with an objective that, you could also incorporate this industry university collaboration. Can we promote this more? That has been one thought process, but also these emerging technologies, we need to focus on them, see the foundations, and then how to take it forward for industry and vertical applications. So today, this is a third one, and this time is on blockchain. Many that are online and will see later this video, quite a lot of you may be knowing about blockchain. So you have to bear with us because we might go through some foundations. And many that are uninitiated to the topic, welcome for joining. And I'm sure you would love this and you will be thinking, what is this new buzz in town of blockchain? So we have a distinguished panelist and we'll try to go through a bit more systematically. But before I introduce to them, let me just talk a little bit to set the context. It's like if we have to parallelize and take an analogy, in the circuit switch call that used to be there, and from circuit switch we moved to the packet switch, and this becomes like packets, and then digital world, we could start playing from the analog world of 1G in communications to today we are talking 5G deployment, 6G research happening. And a lot has happened in this whole journey. Similarly, we think that it's the block concept, the chain of blocks that contain a lot of information in this blockchain can also revolutionize and can join in many verticals. Actually, the first work, if you look into Haber and Stornetta in 1991 or so, they talked about document timestamps that could not be tampered with. That's a kind of one characteristics of blockchain, right? And we have been studying, even in my master's program, we talked about distributed systems, distributed operating systems, distributed database storage, and then immutability. So many of these properties that we have studied in piecemeal, this is a technology that is bringing them together. And obviously the popularity has come in 2008 when this Satoshi Nakamoto, this is the pseudonym, but we talked about this public transaction ledger of cryptocurrency, and the Bitcoin came. It has been 12 years. So many people might think, is it a hype? Is it things? But when some technology stays there for 12 years, there are a lot of ingredients that are there. And this Bitcoin is decentralized digital currency. That's how we started. So this blockchain, it carries this information about sender, receiver, number of Bitcoins, and you talk about a Genesis block and then take it forward. The whole gamut is about no forging, no destroying of information. Once you have recorded, then it stays there. So it's a system for recording and documenting transactions of identical copies. Even that is getting evolved, not necessarily identical copies. And across each member companies or nodes that we call it in the network that are available. So with that introduction, it is my pleasure to invite all these distinguished panelists. We're still waiting for Dr. Dilip to join, but as he joins, is with certain assignments, I believe. And we have Professor Ashok Kumar Das here from IIIT Hyderabad. It's known for its research activity. There is a blockchain activities. He's done his PhD from IIT Kharagpur, working in cryptography, network security, security of Internet of Things, Internet of Vehicles, Internet of Drones, and many other topics. And we would hear from him. And as Dr. Dilip just joined, so let me also introduce him. He is VP Emerging Tech R&D at Reliance. He has held many responsibilities as senior research scientist in IBM, Qualcomm, Intel, PhD from Urbana-Champaign, University of Illinois. And lots of patents. I have a pleasure of working with him in IEEE and other forums. So welcome, Dr. Dilip. Then we have Rajesh Dudu. He's a blockchain and cybersecurity leader. His name has appeared in Forbes Blockchain 50 2021 and TEDx speaker in many forums, author, mentor. He has been leading a big team of 500 plus people in blockchain and cybersecurity and Tech Mahindra, which itself is $5 billion companies. And this is a specialty that they are bringing inside the company for telecom and other verticals, and we would be happy to hear. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Alok, for the kind introduction. Happy to be here.
And we have Mr. Rama Iyer. He's head of innovation at GMR Group. As you can see at the backdrop, all the flights are there. I'm assuming it's Hyderabad airport, but yeah, Telangana is capital of blockchain in India. And he's bringing in this company of innovation culture and, innovation charter for the GMR airports, looking into the adjacency areas of cargo, logistics, IT infra, and he will talk about, that areas and enterprise IoT. And I've been knowing him from his T-Hub days, Chief Innovation Officer, and works with a lot of startups. So again, Rama, most welcome. Thank you all. So we have a great panel, and it's my pleasure to start this discussion. And if I may ask, we'll go around systematically. As we said, we have a bit of time. And if we can take in different rounds, different streams of thought, that will be good. So we would start with a session, in this particular round on blockchain foundations. What is it that is different that we are not aware of it and we should be doing it? But before I start even a formal round, if I would like to invite all of these panelists to introduce themselves, if there is a blockchain history and narratives that they would like to share, and place this topic in the context of their work, their companies, that will be highly appreciated. So we'll start with Dr. Dilip.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Dr. Alok, thank you very much for leading the discussion and for the introductions for all of us. Yeah, I'm with Reliance Jio, and we are working on blockchain technology, developing a platform internally as well, and exploring different applications. So there is a enterprise transformation happening within Reliance to leverage this technology as well, and its intersection with all other technologies like 5G, IoT, and all of that. As we saw the infrastructure evolving into virtualized flavor, so even our blockchain platform was developed in a microservices-based framework, so that anytime there is a flow that and a transaction that requires to be blockchain, you can just invoke a microservice that would call a ledger or execute a smart contract. So in that regard, just to interface it well, we developed that, and in that regard, now we're looking at different applications. One of them is energy management with different kinds of energy sources. For example, for cellular towers, you could have renewables along with diesel and electric. And how do you manage the different electricity inputs from different vendors? Even energy as a service. In the future, we might have solar farms feeding, generating renewable energy, and you could have energy generated somewhere and consumed somewhere else, and you could have a blockchain transaction, for coordinating that. We're also looking at applications in IoT. There are a lot of data streams which are IoT based, and for them you might need secure processing with blockchain, and with 5G. IoT is going to be big, and different applications, whether it's healthcare or agriculture and supply chains and so on. So we are in an evolutionary path trying to adopt this technology and integrate with other blockchain systems as well when needed.
So I think two key points. One is microservice-based implementation realizations and different verticals starting from energy to IoT that you highlighted. Rajesh, if you could introduce the same way. Yeah, in mute.
Yeah. Sorry, it took some time to unmute. Every time I work on these sessions, I imagine there should be some innovation wherein you say unmute. In your mind, the computer should automatically unmute, right? Instant gratification. Okay, so in terms of my journey into blockchain has a very interesting perspective. In my previous career, I was working for a serial entrepreneur called Raman Roy, who is also known as the father of Indian industry. I mean, father of the BPO industry in India, and also he was responsible for angel investments in India. The movement with respect to the angel investments. When I was with him, I was incubating a company in the payments processing space. In India, there have not been many new payment processing companies, at least in the last 10 to 12 years when we incepted that particular company. And then I was leading the market development initiatives as well, being the business head of that particular company, which meant that I had to go to a lot of bankers and talk to them about payment processing. And then I very soon realized that most of these bankers are experts in payment processing. There's no point in telling them what they already know. And in one conversation, one of the bankers had asked me, do you know what is Bitcoin? And how is Bitcoin going to transform the payment processing space? I had no clue what Bitcoin was. And I was trying to tell him, maybe, when you send payments in a fraction, maybe a bit of a coin, then he said, hey, look, don't bullshit. And you better tell me what Bitcoin is, then we will talk about payment processing. So that was a turning moment for me in terms of, I got introduced to this fascinating world of cryptocurrencies and Bitcoin. Almost like in 2013, 2014. And then I started studying this particular space. And when I started studying and then I started talking about it, one thing led to another thing. Incidentally, the first session where I spoke was a FICCI session on Bitcoin and cryptocurrency. And then one thing led to another thing. Then I said, hey, this is going to be a very interesting space. And why don't we do something in this particular space? And that eventually has led to a position as a global practice leader for blockchain at Tech Mahindra. Coming to Tech Mahindra, we have what is called as the Wave 2 technologies, and we have what is called as the big bets. The blockchain aspect has been a very big bet for us, and it constitutes an important element of our Wave 2 technologies. So, our the basis the genesis of our function within Tech Mahindra was to basically to look at blockchain and internalize those blockchain applications in the corporate world. And when I got into this particular world, then I realized that many corporates wanted to look at look at blockchain primarily from a perspective of technology. And then that's why we have many proof of concepts where many proof of concepts have been done, because they wanted to try out this cool tech and an innovative tech. But we brought in a perspective saying that look at blockchain from three perspectives. One is in terms of, is it helping to transform customer experience for your end customers, which other technologies are not able to do so. The second one is, will it help you to reduce your total cost of ownership? And the third one is from a perspective of, will it help you to introduce new revenue streams? And when you apply these three principles across the businesses, then the implementation of blockchain is not confined to a banking and financial services, though it had a lot of entrenchment in the banking and financial services space, because Bitcoin and blockchain are like Siamese twins, which are connected to each other very closely. And often people misinterpret the both, right? If you say blockchain, then everybody says, oh, how do I take care of energy consumption in Bitcoin if I do blockchain in my enterprise? So what I'm trying to tell you is, we have made blockchain mainstream at Tech Mahindra for global customers. We've implemented it for several customers. In fact, we also had the good fortune of working with Reliance Jio during the initial days when they were implementing the consent management platform to insulate the telecom subscribers from spam calls and spam text. And from there, we had taken the impact of blockchain globally. And that's one of the reasons why we were included in the current list of Forbes as the only Indian company contributing to the blockchain adoption worldwide. I'll pause here. I've covered a lot of stuff, but basically I wanted to give you a perspective.
Thank you for taking it, that how Tech Mahindra has built and how you yourself got inducted into this topic, and segregating the two dimensions, the financial world, and definitely we'll talk more about that, and taking it to the other applications, and then proof of concept that you talked about. Great. So I go to Professor Das, IIIT Hyderabad, and it's known, and you have a team that's working. Please introduce us to your activities. And
yeah. So thank you very much for your invitation. So I'm Dr. Das here from IIIT Hyderabad. I did my PhD from IIT Kharagpur in 2008. And I'm here in IIIT Hyderabad around 11 years. And I would like to tell that we have a very good research team that work on blockchain and its associated applications. So currently that we are working on blockchain technologies, though my primary research areas are cryptography, network security. Also recently that we have integrated blockchain as well as AI/ML security. So how to make better predictions on the data sets once you put in the data in the blockchain, because once you put the data in the blockchain, that will be immutable and not modified by adversary. So apart from that, we are having a Center for Excellence in Blockchain that is sponsored by the Ripple in IIIT Hyderabad. And we are one of the fortunate member, because in India, IIT Bombay and IIIT Hyderabad are there. So also that recently we got a project from Government of India National Blockchain Framework Project, that is joint project by CDAC, IIT as well as IIIT Hyderabad. So one thing that we are working on that blockchain is that apart from the Bitcoin and cryptocurrency, because they are not popular somehow in India, so then researchers have found there are several applications of the blockchains, which I'll talk later also. That is now called as the blockchain of things, and our research team have applied the blockchain technologies in several domains. For example, we have applied blockchain technologies in the intelligent transportation systems, smart grid environment. Of course, IoT is there. IoT, one of the very good applications of the blockchain technologies. And fortunately, that in COVID time, we have designed or gave a proposal that was accepted in IEEE forum that how to keep track of vaccine distributions and tracking in COVID scenario, either in the inter-country scenario or inter-country scenario. So likewise, that we have a very good research team. They are working on several domains of the blockchains, apart from Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies. So that is from my side, and I'll talk, of course, about better about the details of this.
Thank you for telling how to go out of the cryptocurrency world to other applications and vaccine distributions. It's a very important job that had to be done, and we'll take it up one of those examples. Come to Rama, the same way, some bird's eye view, macro level, if you could introduce.
Absolutely. I think thanks, Alok, for having me here. Good to be along with Rajesh, Dilip, and Ashok. Rajesh and I we go back a few years on the blockchain scheme of things. We have worked together on multiple things. One of the things that you mentioned about is the government of Telangana's blockchain district. We have kind of tried to keep it in like good spirit and try to see how we can add value and bring some of those things to the table. Apart from that, I was part of a founding team and playing CTO for a blockchain protocol startup. And the idea was, can we do something for India-centric hybrid protocol? While doing that, obviously, it was early days, things were kind of still moving around. And on one side, we were trying to work with Microsoft to see how we can fit into their blockchain as a service paradigm. And on the other side, we were also kind of one of the early guys to kind of be interacting with finance, to look at financial, and they were just about to launch. The third thing is I've also been kind of fortunate enough to do a bunch of publications like Consensus Mechanism, Proof of Digest, that has been published in global publications. And that is something that I'm also trying to kind of work with IIT Bhilai to see if there is enough chops in that to kind of make something and take it forward from a Indian blockchain tech perspective. So I think those are some of the things, some of the broader things. I think one thing that really struck me after so many years is your mention of circuit switch, which is where I started my career working on class 5 switches for Nortel. And then there was obviously Lucent at that time. And then moving to packet switched switches, I worked on everything from PGCP and GCP and was one of the initial set of people to build SIP voice protocol. So that really was good to kind of visit back those days. So thanks, Alok, for bringing that reminder. And I think on the blockchain front, continue to be very excited. I think we have some phenomenal people. I think few of us we are able to collate on this stage today. And I think we should kind of see how we can really take hold of the national framework that is underway that Ashok also touched upon. And can we create something where we can be a world beater rather than continue to catch up on various tech trends that usually we end up doing. I think those are my initial thoughts and happy to expand more. Yeah.
Thank you very much. With this, I think we have introduced in what context we are talking, and many of the people that have been working in the field are getting it. But I just want to do a very quick round for some of the terminologies that we might use. If we could introduce, and I'll start with Dr. Das, so that if somebody is uninitiated into the topic, I don't want to leave them behind.
Yeah.
We'll go around, and if you can start anything that you wanted to make sure, the future discussions rely on it, if you can highlight.
Yeah, so as an academia that I would like to emphasize that blockchain is one of the very, very emerging technologies that is not only popular for Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies, but there are numerous applications starting from the military to civilian applications. For example, we can use in the healthcare applications, Internet of Drones for traffic monitoring purpose, Internet of Vehicles, intelligent transportation systems. And there are many, many numerous domains where blockchain technologies can be utilized in order to enhance the security of the systems. So therefore, as a young researcher, so I'd like to tell that there is a very, very potential applications of the blockchains. So to start with the blockchain technologies, one might have knowledge of mathematical tools as well as cryptography. So therefore, one of the primary that concern is that you should know the cryptography network security part, and also discrete mathematics is required because of probability theory and other discrete mathematics stuffs. Also, you should have basic knowledge of computer networks and also programming to start with the blockchain technologies. So blockchain technology that uses some of the cryptographic primitives. One is known as the cryptographic hash functions. So which is the property that given any arbitrary length input string, you can always produce the fixed length output. For example, NIST USA designed SHA functions which produces 160-bit hash output if you give any arbitrary kind of input to the SHA functions. So one of the property of the hash function is that if you change a single bit or some bits of the input string, that will produce completely random and uniform hash output. And since that in the blockchain, every block contains the previous block hash, current block hash, apart from Marklet root, etc. And if an attacker is trying to change some transactions, some bits, that will be detected because of recalculations of the cryptography hash deciding in that block. So therefore, due to cryptography hash functions, it provides immutability property. And apart from that, you know, blockchain provides the distributed networks that is decentralized. It is not stored in the single server. There is no questions of the single server failure. So if a server fails, other servers to take care of that. And also another good property that it provides transparency because if I put some data in the block, later I can always verify whether my data has been put correctly or not. So therefore, there are numerous good properties of blockchains which ensures that once we put the data in the block, in the blockchain, nobody can tamper with the data and nobody can modify the data. It is secure as compared to if we store simply data in the cloud servers somewhere else. So that is one of the message that I want to give, that it is a very good futures in the.
Great. So decentralized single server failure is not an issue, and the immutability property that is there. So there are some questions coming from the audience. Yeah, and I will kind of inject them into the discussion. So let me put a few of them already. What are the types of records present in a blockchain database? Somebody is asking possible steps involved in a blockchain project implementation. Okay. And let me take one more, name a few of the most widely used cryptographic algorithms and what is a public key, private key with respect to blockchain. Let me pause here. If you want to take some, and then for others also, you can pick it up.
Yeah, for example, in the blockchain technologies, we generally use the public key based algorithms. So you know that what is the public key based cryptographic algorithms? Here, sender and receiver, they don't trust each other. Rather than sender and receiver, they generate a pair of keys. One is known as the private key, which is kept to secret to me. And I have generated my public key that is known to everybody, including attacker also. So hence, if I want to send a message to you, I need to use your public key to encrypt the data and send to you, because you are the only fellow, you have only the private key of your own. So you can obviously decrypt the data and nobody can do it that. Now let us come to the use of the public key crypto systems in the blockchain context. In the blockchain context that we use in an efficient public key crypto systems known as the elliptic curve cryptographic techniques, which is much better than RSA algorithms, public key based, because it works with the smaller key size, and also it is very fast because we are using smaller key size. Encryption decryption process are very, very fast. So in case of the blockchain technologies, in case of the private blockchain, that for example, you take the healthcare applications where patients' information are very confidential, private, we don't want to disclose to anybody. So therefore we need to encrypt the transactions with the help of the owner public key. Because later we want to ensure that owner only can decrypt it because owner has the private key of his own. So that is one of the technique that where we can use the public key cryptographic techniques in order to encrypt the transactions so that owner can only decrypt the transactions later. So that is one of the applications of the cryptographic techniques in the blockchain.
Great. Dr. Dilip, if you want to take it from here and talk about some of these properties, algorithms, as well as the building blocks of a system.
Yeah, sure. A key data structure is the hash chain, which is that the hash of the previous block, it becomes a member of the contents of the current block. And then the hash of that is produced and propagated into the next block and so on. And so essentially, starting from what's called a genesis block, the initial block, and the hash of that is produced and then sent to the next block and so on. Every block contains, some DNA associated with all the past transactions. So that's, and that's why it's called a hash chain. And so any change, as Professor Das mentioned, that a hash, if you make a small change to it, the hash will be completely different. So, any change will impact the entire chain of hashes, and therefore the immutability comes in. The other thing is, when we talk about blockchains, and normally when you have computer programs, you have a private program that updates private data. Here you have to think about a shared program that updates shared data. And so we call a set of entities that are interacting with each other as stakeholders in the system. And then they all have a shared ledger and they execute a shared program. And that's typically called a smart contract. So they all decide to execute this code, arrive at a consensus to actually agree upon this transaction and then record it. When they record it to their respective ledgers. So they have a copy of the transaction. At the same time, there's also something called a world state or a blockchain state. As you process transactions, you're modifying the state associated with the transaction in the system. And that also has to be kept consistent. So there's the ledger, which contains all these transactions. There's logic that's getting executed in a shared manner, and there's state that's getting updated. And so you have state transition machines that you actually implement for each of these use cases. The other thing is about provenance. As information is stored, you can retrieve past information associated with this transaction, improving, providing greater trust in the system as well, and with the distributed ledger, the transparency as well. So these are kind of the key constructs that we would use, and typically these are utilized in what are called permission private blockchain systems, which is where blockchain technology seems to be evolving into. In addition to public blockchains with cryptocurrencies and all of that, that are also very prevalent as well these days, and along with support for tokens, fungible, non-fungible, and we'll probably get to that later. So.
Right, great. Rajesh, do you like to take it from there? Dilip had already talked about the microservices, and I think one of the question is, what are the blocks that are there if you have a project? We can take one of the examples, but more than the application side of it, I think in this round, if we can focus on what are the elements that we need to look into it. Dilip highlighted a couple of them, but if you want to take it from there.
Yeah, from an implementation perspective, most important is what is the business outcome that we are going to achieve. Until and unless we define the business outcome, then the implementation may not give the intended outcomes, number one. Number two, before implementing blockchain, we also have to see whether if there is blockchain really required for this kind of implementation. If it is really required, then why is it required? What is blockchain going to do? Is blockchain serving as a single source of truth for all the transactions? Is it going to serve as a trusted middleware, plugging into the various systems that are there and consolidating all the information and presenting it as a single layer or a single source of truth? truth. And we see in an organizational context, many blockchain applications have been implemented as a middleware, primarily to provide the provenance for the data, to consolidate the system of records that are there. Having addressed that particular piece, then you have to look into the core implementation perspective. Are you going to use the source code from GitHub, or are you going to use a platform as a service that is already available in the marketplace? Number one. Number two, in terms of what are the systems that are there from a backend perspective that need to be integrated? How is your front-end presentation layer going to look like? And where this blockchain is going to be dovetailed? That's the second aspect. The third aspect is whether you want to build your own chain, or you want to extend this chain to cover your partners and suppliers, or you want to extend this chain to cover the entire operators in the industry. So from a micro chain perspective, it is more important if you're a large organization, you have a multitude of systems, global operations, and the systems don't talk to each other. You have a coexistence of legacy systems, new age systems, on-prem systems, and various other kind of systems. And then you want to build a small micro chain using blockchain, whether it is in supply chain or whether it is in any other function. People have done it in supply chain. People have done it for global treasury operations. People have done it for global remittance operations. That's one aspect. The second aspect is, do you want to onboard your suppliers and partners onto this and extend it as a closed loop business system to interact with your suppliers and partners? And we've seen several implementations of this in the supply chain industry. And the third one is bring everybody together in the industry to address a common problem. And one good example which will resonate with Dilip and others as well is where all the telcos in the Indian ecosystem have come together to implement the guidelines by Telecom Regulatory Authority of India called unsolicited commercial communication. How do you fight unsolicited commercial communication? In simple terms, it is nothing but spam calls and spam text, where all the telco operators have come together and they developed the blockchain application using Hyperledger Fabric. Of course, some of them went on a different cloud environment. So in fact, it is the world's largest multi-cloud implementation of Hyperledger Fabric, where all the telco operators and their affiliated digital marketers have come together and they are exchanging information with each other seamlessly on the chain, and some decisions are happening off the chain as well to protect the customers from the spam calls and spam text. So these are some of the important aspects that we need to take into consideration. I have seen cases where people give a lot of importance to technical aspects and ignore the business aspects, and vice versa. So both are a recipe for failure. You cannot ignore the business aspect and focus on technical aspect, and vice versa. You need to have a good blend of a business objective and backed it up by a solid technical architecture. That is what I would like to say.
Great, thank you. Rama, if I could pull you in this point, I know that you were even working on some blockchain India stack, and many people are participating and put a lot of effort. From there, the stacks, again, we have this ISO OSI layer in communication stack. Maybe if you have to think like that, again, components, just to sum it up, how would you put that?
Sure. So I think all the other people have really touched upon a lot of the core aspects of it. And I think just to kind of not lose sight, I think people kind of find it very hard for outsiders to understand and comprehend this. Especially, Dilip emphasized on the public blockchain versus the commercial private side. Especially, I think the need and the logic also is different. For example, on the public side, it is about the strength of the cryptographic hash so that nobody breaks it, ensuring immutability, ensuring that double spend doesn't happen, which is like the base and nemesis of the trust and foundation that needs to happen. Versus in a private setting, I think it is more about a multi-stakeholder environment where I think the trust is there, but we are trying to kind of improve process efficiency. Everybody kind of, there is no central one big elephant in the room, but everybody has equal vote and power. and everybody's looking at the transaction data and the status of it in the same way, same time, everything. So what we are kind of seeing there is a lot of post work that typically happens with respect to audit, reconciliation doesn't need to happen. Now there is nothing like you need to go back and check whether it is end of day, end of week, end of month. Everybody's seeing it the same way, especially classical manufacturing, like where there are dozens of supply chain partners, northbound and southbound. How can you kind of distill information? How can you distill flows? How can you kind of make decisions instantaneously, right? I think those are classical things blockchain really helps solve. And I think one thing that Rajesh kind of always mentions this, and I think it requires to be underlined is blockchain should not be a force fit. It is not going to solve everything for everyone. There are things that are really cookie cut for it. And when you kind of implement that, it really stands out with its whole glory and color. And I think he talked about the telecom problem that they solved, where there are multiple stakeholders involved, how everybody can look at it similar way. To answer your real question about the stack, I think we still need to get there, Alok, in terms of I think CDAC, IIT, IIIT are trying to kind of work on that national framework of what does this layer means and how does it map to our classical OSI network layer, and then kind of put out the pieces of what does a protocol mean, what are the various layers, how can you kind of create enough abstraction layers so that this kind of suits well for any type of blockchain protocol and implementation, and how there are intermediate abstraction layers that can talk between a private and a public at a later point in time. I think those are things that we need to hash out. I think we have probably got started on that, but I think still some room to go.
Great. Stay there. I just wanted to come back to you and see on the enterprise IoT, if we can take a specific applications. And I will also bring in these specific questions that are coming. But just to sum it up, what so far we have discussed is the foundations of it, and hash being a important component, and how the DNA is flowing from the Genesis block to subsequent. We looked into the ECC algorithm being better than the RSA from the context of it. Obviously, there are parameters in that context. It's a shared program with shared data, and the smart contract that's vital. And that's kind of paving the way to popularize blockchain. I would say that's one driver to take it. And then a couple of points that we talked about on the ledger, on the logic, on the state that Dilip mentioned, provenance, that is their immutability. So a lot of properties and what are the ingredients. And as Rama just mentioned, the stack part of it is a work in progress. We'll continue to do that. But I think we have got the elements clearly.
So I just wanted to add, sorry, Alok, I just wanted to add one thing so that the viewers get a good understanding. See, nothing is game changing with regards to blockchain technology. And why I say that is blockchain technology has utilized asymmetric encryption, the public-private key pair, which was there for quite some time around. It has leveraged the SHA algorithm, SHA-1, now SHA-2 and SHA-3, which have been around from 2001 onwards. It has used the proof of work concept, which was initially invented by Adam Back in his protocol called Hashcash, which was used to cater to email duplicacy and email spam. So the technology per se, the stack per se, it's written in C, C++ originally. And then I had used trapdoor mathematical functions, which are generally used in the encryption world. And then using aspects like nonce, repeating the hashing multiple times over, creating Merkle trees and creating. So nothing of that is game changing ever, because it has been around right from 1970s onwards to about 2000. But what is game changing about blockchain is the way it has been brought together. The individual elements have been brought together, and to solve the problem which the scientists have been trying to solve for several decades is the problem of double spending without having an intermediary in space. That's why it's known as digitization of trust, decentralization. So if we say blockchain is a game-changing technology, no, it is not a game-changing technology. But the application of blockchain because of its individual components, the way it has been presented together as a one single package is definitely game changing. I just wanted to
Very nicely put. I think it's not about the algorithmic complexity or the algorithmic availability. They have been there, but as you just said, all being put together nicely for a purpose, for business, for revenue, for solving certain things on trust. I think that makes it very different. Great way. So with that, I think I told Rama, we'll start with you in this round to see the application side of it. And we'll come first to our own applications, as Rajesh also mentioned about telecom, like unsolicited communication, sophistications, how we can bring there the spams and other things. We will come to those applications. When I see even in Samsung, for example, we have this SmartThings as a platform that we have multi-device experience. We connect all of this, but it's more for smart home or building. And even there, when we connect it, one is the AI part of applications that if this, then that happens. Then second part is obviously IoT part of it. But there is a lot of data. There is a data platform of all these devices, how it is happening. And let's just consider in a home, if I want to have a smart surveillance service, let's say monitoring my home. Now, this cannot be done by just like a normal provider. There has to be a specialized service provider. Now, if I carry as Samsung, just taking as an example of this SmartThings platform, and somebody comes here and is providing, I need to provide some data to them and take it, vice versa. And this is where it comes. And earlier we were doing by simple contract, by agreements, but it has to be done much more automatically. And this is where the smart contract comes, even in the data sharing and many other applications. So just to trigger the thoughts, but I'll come to Rama and hear a bit more in airport that you are working in GMR. Maybe you can take some examples there and see how this could be envisioned in that context.
Absolutely. I think it's really been fun because I think what we do, in an airport is like a smart city in itself. It is a classical place of multi-stakeholder environment where there are different service providers who come together to make a passenger travel from one place to the other, whether it is the airports, the airlines, the security, the CISF, whether there are ground handlers, whether there are technology operators, whether there are F&B retail outlets. There are so many different people, and I think both the air side as well as the land side is a complete different ecosystem in itself. And I think today we are working on multiple use cases where actually blockchain is not like a luxury, it is front and center. Without that, we cannot even think about building the other blocks together, because all of those people bring in different elements of data, and the data needs to be kind of co-used by various actors so that we can work on that and then produce something meaningful. Whether it is for example, let's just take the airside environment where at the apron where the flight kind of gets parked eventually, there is so many things with respect to the air, the fuel, the food service, the catering, security appliances. There is a whole bunch of CMOS cameras. There is a whole bunch of positioning GPS of ground handling vehicles that do the transit of passengers from the gate to the aircraft. And everything needs to work in cohesion, and it shouldn't kind of not only increase the speed, the range, but also the path that is governed for it. So now here everything has to be data monitored, and we need to ensure everything is kind of shared with all the stakeholders. Whether the bus that carries us from the gate to the aircraft, is it following a certain path? Is it in the speed limit that it is supposed to be? Is it in a place where it can warranted to be, right? All of that. And this data is shared with the airport ground control. It is shared with obviously the driver on his mobile if there needs to be flag. It goes to the provider of that service who does the ground handling, and it also goes to the main security apparatus and perimeter. So I think we are really both challenged and blessed at the same time, where there is an opportunity to really use blockchain at the head. Currently, we are working with a startup called Stackwick to do vaccine ledger. So the transfer of vaccine today is like probably the most important thing that we all are kind of living through. So the entire flow of vaccine, whether it is on the produce side of Hyderabad and distributed globally, or the things that are coming in from various sources. So today those need to be temperature controlled, and all of that IOC sensor data. Today we are seeing it in practice implemented and all stakeholders monitoring and observing it. Otherwise, it needs to be junked if it kind of dips below a certain temperature for a certain amount of time. So I think that's a case that's already kind of going live.
Sure.
We are looking at the entire passenger experience and loyalty because of passenger being touched by us, by airline, by retail guys, all of that. So that's something that we're also picking up on that. So I think those are things that I thought I'll kind of table it for everybody to listen in.
Since you mentioned about the vaccine control, and Professor Das also earlier mentioned, so I would request him to say, how in the academia also you're doing some fundamental research, or what do you see, and then how does that get plugged it into the real system? Maybe Professor Das?
Yeah, so fortunately that our research team has done recently and work on vaccine distributions and tracking in IOMT-based blockchain applications. What is the IOMT? Is that Internet of Medical Things. For example, if there is a patient admitted to hospital, his body is equipped with the several implemented devices, medical devices or wearable devices. They can communicate each other securely through the authentication mechanism, and the information can come to the local gateway node, then the medical server is set up. So here what we have done that, say suppose a government agency instruct a vaccine distributor to distribute say vaccines to some states or some hospitals. Those kind of records in terms of transactions, they need to be also put in the blockchain purpose. And also say, for example, if a patient in a hospital is vaccinated, so that will be from a transactions with all the details. And also after vaccination, say for example, if there is any side effect, that transactions would be also recorded. So therefore, what we have done that, we have integrated all kind of transactions, and we have taken all the transactions to be serious, private, all are encrypted using the elliptic curve-based cryptographic algorithms. They are put in the blocks and they are mined using the consensus-based mechanisms. For example, we have used practical Byzantine fault tolerance algorithms, PBFT, for achieving that purpose. One of the things that I should emphasize that before putting the data or transactions, we want secure mechanisms, because adversary at any time can trap your data, can modify your data. So therefore, one of the goal is that how to make secure communications fast prior to coming to the say the hospital or somewhere which putting the data in the block in the blockchain. So therefore, we should have authentications or access control mechanisms by which the two entities can say the authenticate each other. Then they can establish a session key, and using the session key, all the transactions needs to be encrypted and decrypted. That is one of the very, very essential part in any of the data, needs to be very, very secure before putting the data in the blockchain. So that I want to emphasize here.
Okay,
so
great. I always tell people, when somebody comes and says digital transformation and how important it is, I just tell them, just think it of COVID happening in 2010. If we are not prepared, it could have been catastrophic. So I want to go back to you and ask very specifically for our audience, suppose this vaccination things had to happen 10 years back when blockchain was in its nascent stage and not popular. What would you have missed? Whatever implementation you are doing, are there something cosmetic or is it fundamental? Can you bring it out for people? How do
Yeah, so one of the things that, for example, if the COVID happened in the 10 years back, probably we should put the data in the cloud environment, in cloud server. So again, once put in your data in the cloud server, there is always a possibility, something known as the privilege insider attacker. Even that cloud server is trusted, but if admin say is dishonest or put some data or the mismanage some data and change the data, there is no way to let a track that whether my data has been put in the cloud server is genuine or not. But thanks to the blockchain technology is now implemented, once you put the data in the blockchain, therefore this is almost guaranteed that nobody can tamper with the data. So that is one of the big differences with using blockchain and without blockchain. in these scenarios.
Thank you. Thank you very much. So I'll come to Dilip as well as Rajesh on the communication part of it. And also there is some questions. So let me put it together. How blockchain can be used in online e-commerce marketplace model. So Rajesh, if you'd like to take this as well as what you highlighted before on unsolicited calls and spams, maybe you can explain us a little bit how the world would be better with blockchain.
Yeah, absolutely. So from an e-commerce perspective, if you look at the applications and if you go to the genesis of blockchain, it's very clearly written in the white paper written by Satoshi Nakamoto called the peer-to-peer electronic cash system, wherein he says very clearly saying that why he's working on this kind of a new age payment system, because as commerce gets onto the internet, there will be more and more small and medium businesses which will also get onto internet. And if there are any fraudulent practices, today it is proven that synthetic fraud in e-commerce is a major challenge, wherein synthetic fraud is a fraud wherein two people get into a fraudulent situation knowingly well, but the relation between both cannot be interpreted, as a result of which when the payment companies go and investigate into the fraud, and if they find that merchant has been lacking at the appropriate measures, they just go and charge back to the merchants. As a result of which the merchant has a double whammy. One, the merchant has lost the merchandise, and second, the merchant is not only getting the payment, it's not even getting the payment. And Satoshi Nakamoto in his paper says that this is a major challenge, especially for small and medium business merchants, and there should be a payment system which can be irreversible. That means the transactions cannot be changed. That's why the immutability component of blockchain has come into existence. So from an e-commerce perspective, if you look at the applicability of blockchain, Bitcoin as a payment system was primarily invented to cater to small merchants with commerce on internet. So it's a payment system which has been conceived purely for e-commerce kind of transactions, number one. Number two, as we go into the distant future, not too distant, when we get into a scenario where we have nano transactions and micro transactions. A good example is the storage space. Look at the cost of storage space in the last 10 years or 15 years, and look at the price of that particular storage space today. It is only going downwards, right? And it is going downwards much, much faster. And with the advent of use cases like Edge, where you want on-demand storage at the user end, at the device end, when they are in a high intensive game, wherein they would like to use that for may not be for hours together, but for a minute or maybe fraction of a minute. There could be some use cases of that nature. Then what will be the price you will pay for the storage space? And you will pay only a fraction for that particular storage space. Now, where is the payment authorization system today, which is there in the world, which can authorize that fraction of a payment at a cost lesser than the transaction cost itself? You don't have those payment systems in the world today. That's why these cryptocurrency trail-based payment systems are going to play a major role in e-commerce for nano and micro transactions. And that's how the blockchain system has been incepted. Number one. Number two, today we are in the world of digital collectibles. Again, it is completely an online transaction. A digital collectible is somebody trying to collect an artifact which others can easily copy and replicate. So when you have things of this nature, how do you differentiate the person who is the original owner of that particular digital artifact and somebody who has copied it? And the analogy is similar to what we see in the physical world, right? Today, there are people buying Louis Vuitton bags, which will cost probably $5,000 to $10,000 to $20,000. And there are people who are buying Louis Vuitton bag in Ullas Sindhinagar Association Market in Bombay at $2,000. Now, how do you differentiate that 2000 Louis Vuitton bag from a $10,000, $20,000 Louis Vuitton bag, and then people have used, certificates or QR codes or emblems or whatever it is. Take the same concept to the online world. So now you have this game called NBA Top Shots, where you can buy the top shot of a basketball player, and some of the top shots have gone and sold at $200,000. It is nothing but a reel which is showing the guy putting a magical basket, and that reel has been sold at $200,000. Now I go to BBC or a sports channel or wherever, I see the same game, I copy it, and then I say, now I am the rightful owner of that particular digital reel. Then how do you differentiate the guy who paid $20,000 to get it, and I probably got it through a Tata Sky subscription or whatever it is, and then paid a fraction of the money? That's where blockchain through non-fungible tokens in the online world is playing a major role. And it has already created a digital crypto collectible industry. And we think that digital fashion is all about buying a shirt on Myntra. That's not digital fashion. That's an online sale or an online purchase. Digital fashion in today's world is you can order a tailor-made suit for your digital persona on the internet, and hold your breath, people are willing to pay $5,000, $10,000, $20,000 for those digital suits. And the digital fashion is already a $10 billion industry in the world today. So now how do you protect those kind of people who have invested not only high amount of money, but their sentiments into those digital goods? And when they get stolen and when they get replicated, these guys have nothing short of a nervous breakdown. That's where blockchain as a technology is going to come in. And with an associated token, it is going to differentiate between the original from the fake. So these are some interesting applications that we are seeing in the online world today.
Sure. I want to come back to this non-fungible tokens. But just before that, I want Dilip to highlight on the telecommunication context. Even there is a question on supply chain management, import-export business. And then I know from 5G's work, when you talk about beyond 5G, 6G's concept, blockchain is going to play a big role. And Geo platform is there. So I would like to hear one more time on the telecom context, and then we'll come back to NFT for a bit more discussions. Dilip, you are muted.
Yeah, thanks, Dr. Yeah, so as these networks evolve, we have different kinds of applications being supported, with 5G, you have capabilities like ultra reliable, low latency communications, where you can be communicating at the edge, where in a very timely manner and things like that. So you can see that this will require blockchain processing really at the edge, and then as data is processed to the edge, it can actually finally be consolidated back in the cloud somewhere else. So you will then see hierarchical blockchains in that regard. So you will have data processing at very close to base stations and things like that, trying to do, for example, trying to figure out the path that a drone needs to take, or trying to learn the behavior at the edge of a community, and trying to help them serve them better with micro lending and things like that. So some of these applications, or in agriculture, when the farmer goes to the mandi, you have a smart contract there that makes sure that he gets paid a reasonably high portion of the value of the product relative to the value in the city where his end product is being actually sold. So there the supply chain comes in with transparency, executing a smart contract at the mandi to get the farmer the right price. So blockchain is going to be really useful in all of these contexts. And going forward with automation, with IoT, humans cannot intercept every possible data and process it. So we'll have automation in these systems, and this code, there will be smart contracts that have to be executed, and these will be smart contracts that are shared logic that the stakeholders would have agreed upon. And so you would execute that in an automated fashion to deliver the right service. In healthcare, for example, as you're monitoring the vital signs of a patient, you could call an ambulance, transfer the patient records over blockchain, and even process insurance on blockchain before the patient even reaches the end, and so on. So, and with IoT data as well, our what we think we want to process, and because we cannot intercept IoT data because it's in high volume, you would have your digital twins inserted into the systems. That logic now, digital twins could then you could also replicate that behavior so that you have consensus across these digital twins and things like that. So a lot of interesting automation is going to be possible with providing trust in the system with a shared logic and shared data being processed. So it's going to be very interesting going forward.
Yeah, so you brought in three things. First of all that data that people are able to see transparently, even if you are remote and less literate and things like that, so you can see that. Second is not being able to change the record being there. And third thing is this smart contract, an automated way of connecting and making things happen, not manual interventions into that. So great points. Thank you. And I will come back to this NFT point because that's very interesting, and it has gone quite popular these days. If I can just share one data, in first half 2020, that non-fungible tokens was a kind of $13 million business, and they're saying first half 2021, it's $2.5 billion. So things have moved significantly, quite a lot in the context of art and being auctioned, being managed. So it's a disruptive cryptographic set of assets. The only difference is in coins, probably we say, okay, the coin X to coin Y, there is no difference as long as I get my money. Money has no color and no order, and denominations only thing that matters. Whereas, in the cases of irreplicable assets, in unique piece of art or whatever, sculpture, that is there. And recently I was listening to one TV show, and JC Carmichael, his Maroon 5 band, and they are bringing this NFT into their whole show. I mean, one is the ticket selling and things like that, but also I think the charitable donations, the DAO, distributed autonomous organization, and how can you do that? And very interestingly, I saw that, for example, even it's a thought process. I don't know how much real it is, but suppose there is a floral picture, and if you want to do carbon monitoring, and if you are not doing well, actually the flower would go a little rotten. Whereas, if you are doing well, the flower will blossom and the fragrance would come up. So this kind of things, and these are people who have been deeply there in bands and arts, and they are also picking it up and getting fused. So I would love to hear in this round, whether it is on the NFT side, or if you have some interesting stories on fiat currency to cryptocurrency, I would love to share. I'll start with Rama and then go around, choose your topic and share with us something interesting that may be beyond your work, but that you are hearing, that's getting realized, and that's the future.
Sure. So I think first for the larger broad audience, right? I mean, we're talking about fungible, non-fungible, right? So I think simple definition is fungible is something like, there is like rice or wheat from different, farmers and crops which get mixed. It's hard to differentiate. So those are fungible. And Alokni mentioned about there are multiple 1 rupee coin, there is no difference. So those are fungible things. Non-fungible are something which stand out on its own. So that's something for the broader outside audience. I think my read of the thing is I belong to the more classical school of thought where there is obviously value, and then there is a value on a certain asset is created because of what is it of value to the stakeholder that is absorbing it. And that is obviously in clash with the entire crypto side of the house, where the value, the services, the revenue, and all of that just goes out of the window in terms of correlation to how it is valued, of what is the utility, how many real applications on a public blockchain, and hence the valuation of points, right? Similar, I think, extension, my thinking is in terms of the art and NFT thing. Art and collectibles was supposed to be more personal, touchy-feely thing, but obviously has Rajesh educated us that it is really now all about digital. You need to only kind of be present digitally and then buy things, and then you kind of cherish that. And I think you can't fight facts. Those are facts today. People are trading, people are buying, people are putting out their arts in collectibles. So I think those are hard facts and those are happening. So it's just kind of, we are evolving as like, like humans or the society itself, where you have a life which is physical, and then you have a life which is digital. And then, we kind of communicating, collaborating on the digital platform. It's like, maybe the transient phase of it. So I guess whether we like, agree or not, I think there is that world that is being created. There is a world that is being cherished. There is a world which people are clamoring upon. And that also in a way kind of gives democratization as internet gave to a lot of people. It is a democratization of you can be anywhere, anytime, any device, not even needing to be physical, like, touchy-feely. You can have your virtual avatar that kind of goes and conquers things and does trades and business. Some of those things are still kind of like sketchy in nature, but absolutely, I think it is getting there. And for good or bad, like blockchain continues to be the base and associated with that. So blockchain continues to be much more horizontal spread that way, right? So that's my initial thoughts on that.
Thank you, Professor Das. What's different in NFT compared to the traditional other blockchain that we talked about? What is it that's in terms of its implementation concepts? What had to be done extra?
Yeah, so in academics, we have done similar kind of research, which is known as the digital right management. So where say I have the data owner, I have say recording song, I want to sell someone, but someone should not be giving the credit to me that okay, I am not data owner. So like that, your NFT also the similar way it is done, so that though people don't get physical copy of the things, but the digital copy or like tokens, they can be distributed to others so that they can also sell it. So therefore, in context of the blockchain, it is also good. Also, people are now putting blockchain context in the digital right management also, so that your proper digital data can be put in the blockchain so that nobody can tamper with that. So one of the aspect is there. So therefore, I can see it has very good features in, for example, for NFT, like digital right management, etc. It has very good features. I think it will work.
Great, great. Dilip, you talked about, I think you hinted, and Rajesh also mentioned about indirectly on the fractional ownership, like, even if this art piece that we are talking, maybe we own a part of it, right? And we take pride, like in startups, angel investments. So that concept plus any other things on NFT you'd like to add?
Yeah, no, it's interesting. For example, the painting that was sold for $17 million for digital art. The artist was thinking, hey, maybe it can be used in a virtual world. You walk into a hotel lobby in the virtual world, and in that hotel lobby is my painting as you walk in, kind of thing, right? So all these digital artifacts can find a place in virtual worlds potentially as well, and maybe a very high resolution version of this picture can be utilized in some sort of a 3D game or something like that, immersed into the game and stuff, and utilized and paid for as it is utilized. So And yes, in terms of shared ownership, and that can be a useful thing to track on a blockchain system. So yeah, it's going to be fun with these kinds of systems. Ultimately, though, essentially, as Professor Das was saying, digital rights management was there, but you would maintain the rights, whoever had the rights, for the content. But now we are enabling the transfer of the rights to somebody else, and potentially a shared transfer as well using blockchain. So
that's
DRM sort of extended kind of thing.
Yes. So it's not just establishing who is the owner, but also transferring, modifying, sharing, and it can make people even living NFT in some way. That history is there, right? Recently, that World Wide Web code also got sold through this NFT mechanism, and so now it goes to the second owner, and if they might modify, but the history would be there. So Rajesh, right. I will come back to you. You talked about the NFT, so I would like you to wrap it up with all the thoughts on the NFT dimensions.
Yeah, absolutely, Alok. So from an NFT perspective, it definitely brings in new opportunities to unlock the value, to monetize the value from artist perspective and also from a collector's perspective. There is definitely an underlying fundamentals that drive the valuation, but a lot of it at today's juncture is also based on euphoria, FOMO, fear of missing out, and various NFTs that are coming into the marketplace, right? So one needs to be very careful in terms of what are the NFTs that will actually gain value, which are independent of euphoria or fear of missing out, and what has an some bit of fundamentals driving the value of those particular NFTs. Having said that, it definitely represents a pretty good opportunity, not only from a B2C perspective, business to customers perspective, peer-to-peer perspective, but also from a B2B perspective. With regards to the digital rights management, what we have done is with regards to digital right management, what happens is it's all based on forensic marking. Whether it pertains to the digital file, whether it is an audio or whether it is a video, and these forensic marking of these digital rights, especially in the context of OTT, over the top channels, and now because of the pandemic, theatrical releases are not happening anymore, right? Nobody is going to theaters, and everybody is binge watching the content on the whether it is a web series or whether it's a TV series. It's all happening over the OTT aspects. And when you have this complicated aspects, especially when you have the contractual obligations, which have a lot of geo blockings, that means you can take the content and you can stream it only in one particular area. You are not supposed to stream it in another area. For example, Netflix shut down a company because they violated contractual obligations pertaining to the geo blocking. They streamed content which, as per their agreement with Netflix, shouldn't be streamed not only on other OTT channel, but also in other geos, even though the Netflix has bought it, for example, in Americas. So because of these complexities, there is a lot of digital rights management getting onto blockchain. In fact, at TechM, we have developed a platform which deals with blockchain-powered contracts and rights management system. And now we are backing that up with an NFT token as well, so that tomorrow, if there is any dispute, it is not only proven with the smart contracts that are there on the blockchain platform, but there's also an proof of ownership with an underlying NFT, which is backing that proof of ownership or proof of rights. So these are some interesting stuff that is coming up in the media and entertainment space, not only with regards to non-fungible tokens, which are used for investment or which are used for unlocking the value, but it is also being used to cater to some of very, very tricky contractual obligations that are there. And if people violate those contractual obligations, it it may bring the entire company down. So those are some of the trends that we are seeing
So
in the market.
smart contract signing as well as enforcement would come to be a big topic. Great.
Exactly.
So I think we have covered quite a good number of topics. We're coming towards the end of the sessions. I think a lot of questions that came, I tried to answer. If you have any more questions, please put it in the chat box. And this would be the final round, and we'll go a little quick on the remaining 6-7 minutes that we have. But let's discuss this well. See, we started by talking about how we landed in this whole blockchain and Bitcoin and how it got evolved, how in our journey, I mean, in the companies, in the academia, we started our labs and activities. We talked a lot about the foundations, many of the terminologies that are important. We brought in specific applications into your companies, data sharing dimensions, then a lot of fun, how it is unfolding in NFTs, cryptocurrencies. Now, nothing is kind of without challenge. So I'd like to see in this round to close it, not in a gloomy note. This is on a high note we are doing, and it's quite exciting. But at the same time, just to be cognizant of facts that nothing comes free. And just to highlight a few of them, for example, there is a lot of issues about computational power required. And on one hand, we talk about green revolutions, but is blockchain and Bitcoin mining, is it going to be too much catastrophic in terms of, the power requirements? So that's one theme. We are talking about inclusivity of society, but the processing power is not in everybody's hand to be same, right? Somebody with a lower computing power or mobile versus others. So how do you make inclusive, or will it create more digital divide? And then there are new protocols, new nets, new currency. Anybody can create a stack, Bitcoin, we know, and Ethereum that has its own stability, but what it takes, and Rajesh talked about FOMO and not knowing things and getting into it, and we might be a loser in one sense or the other. So there are many such thoughts and challenges. With that trigger, I would go around and start with Dilip, if you want to highlight some of the difficulties, challenges, and ways to circumvent.
Yeah, I think Rajesh talked about it in the beginning. When we talk about blockchain, we have to be absolutely certain we really need it. For example, if if data just needs to be shared, can it just be can a central database just do the job, right? That everybody just taps into and reads or writes into, locks and writes and updates and things like that. So we have to be. We have to think about is there an alternative as well and stuff like that, and so when we actually decide to have a shared ledger and distribute the data across the stakeholders, what value is it providing in terms of trust, right? Now that they have additional copies, now that which is with immutability, and you can have consensus on a read across the stakeholders, then you can actually be sure that the data is immutable and so on. So when you see, you have to think through this and decide, whether you need the system. And then as you say, as you think about information sharing, you think about the logic that needs to be executed on top of it and things like that. So each use case is different. Typically, blockchain platforms will provide like basic plumbing. On top of that, we have to build the intelligence on top of it, thinking through each use case. So those are challenges that we have to face, and then convince everybody that yes, we should use the technology, or hey, no, we don't really need it. So that's a good call that we have to make. There can be a lot of social good use cases as well. With COVID, for example, some people still don't trust the vaccine and things like that. So people can put information out there that, hey, I took the vaccine, and these were my symptoms and things like that, and people may feel better that, okay, it's okay to take the vaccine, and it's not so. And then as people still get affected by it, you can find out whether they were vaccinated or not, and things like that. So the shared information can help build social good and trust in the vaccines themselves, and different vaccines may have different levels of trust in the system as it goes through. So blockchain can help in all of these kind of things. Definitely,
So don't jump around. Look at the values that you are gaining, and then,
yeah,
find
you have to look at
you should apply.
trade-offs and see
Yes.
where it gives you the best benefit and utilize it.
Like any system, the trade-off needs to be looked into.
Right. Yeah.
Professor Das?
Yeah, so I'd like to highlight three challenges that we faced in the blockchain things. So first of all, that smart contract implementations. The smart contract is a piece of code that is written in programming language. So sometimes the programmers not carefully coded that part. So therefore, from system security part, there could be some software vulnerabilities known as buffer overflow, heap overflow, all these things will come. So that should be taken care of that while coding that smart contract, because your smart contract could be written, designed correctly, but while it is coded, that may not be implemented properly. That will give to the vulnerabilities where attacker can get information. So another issue that we face that while having consensus algorithms, for example, if we take PBFT algorithm, still it has limitations, scalability issue. So that issue that needs to be solved, that for example, transactions per second that we process, that is not great. Can we have better consensus mechanisms where we can probably apply that? So third thing that we want to say, make it challenge, say, for example, as we told that we have a heterogeneous kind of devices. I have says very low power devices, mobile power device, other has a very high power device. So can we design some lightweight security protocols so that can work? So that will rely on, say, for example, only hash functions or symmetric encryptions, or at most ECC based lightweight protocol, so that they can communicate securely. So those three challenges, I feel that should be addressed here while implementing blockchain.
Yeah, so you brought in two interesting points on top of what Dilip had highlighted. I mean, his main point was the trade-off in the system level. But what you are telling is my research algorithms are yet not there to scale to transactions per second. So how can we push new consensus protocols and things like that, lightweight? So that's one dimension you said, but you also said that fine, those things are not there and we'll have to do, but at least let's do the implementation well. Because if you make a mistake there, then the system could be too vulnerable, because it's a big distributed systems and things, the more attacks could happen. Very good points, very good points. So I'll come to Rajesh and then to Rama to understand in the broader context, but also I see a question here, what's legal in India and crypto and otherwise, and even policies. If you want to make some comments on that, most welcome.
Yeah, absolutely. In terms of from a regulatory climate, there is no clear set of regulations with respect to cryptocurrencies in India yet. But if you're investing in cryptocurrencies and doing your KYC and then buying it from the main sources, the legal sources, whether it is decentralized exchanges or any other registered exchanges that are there in India, and these exchanges will not sell cryptocurrency to you if you don't do your KYC. At the minimum, you would need your Aadhaar card and the PAN, and then you link your bank account to the currency exchange account, and then you can buy. Then absolutely it is not a challenge. And if there is a significant amount of holding, and if you're filing taxes, then you need to declare under the assets category. It is still not clear whether it is classified as assets or as commodities. So the situation was pretty much like when peer-to-peer lending used to happen in India, even without a peer-to-peer regulation from the Reserve Bank of India. The situation is somewhat similar with regards to cryptocurrencies at this point of time. And people have to be very careful I have no qualms in saying this because, Vajirex, which is a Binance-funded exchange, they kind of violated the norms. In India, you cannot sell crypto without doing your KYC, but Vajirex had two options, one with KYC and another one without KYC. And very soon, they had a lot of, inquiries from the government. And now I noticed that they have shut down non-KYC crypto holding, because moment you do a non-KYC crypto holding, it gets into the thin line of money laundering, because you're holding valuable assets without
declaring
your particular identity. So from that perspective, buy it from an exchange which does your KYC well, and link the funding with your bank accounts. And then you may receive crypto from outside into your particular account, but it will still go into an authorized exchange in an account that has been validated. As long as you stay on the right side of the law, holding crypto in India is not illegal. Let me say it is not illegal, but the guidelines are not still very clear.
Very good. Thank you. Thank you very much. Rama?
I think all good input from Rajesh, as always. I think just to add some more, I think people need to kind of, obviously we talked about the enterprise blockchain, and that's pretty solid and sturdy. So I think we're all kind of pretty much in line backing that. I think in terms of the whole crypto or the coin side, I think it kind of, as Rajesh was saying, it kind of mostly driven by like FOMO hype, and it is never dictated, or nobody talks about customers or revenue. I mean, and it's an industry which kind of, moves billions of dollars in market cap by an influencer tweet. So I think it is for, like, people need to kind of responsibly evaluate what is the value, why it is kind of, and then do their thing, whether it is investing or funds. So I think people need to kind of be really aware and look at the thing. And if you look at the history of the entire coin space, I think it moved from like regular trading and whole bunch of projects, and then that hype got over, then it moved to DEX, like exchange, then it moved to DeFi, and I'm like, DeFi, decentralized finance, everything was decentralized to begin with. I mean, what is this DeFi separately, right? And then there is this NFT. So I think the trend has been that every couple of years there seems to be this move to a new place and hype, and then play out thing, and then move to the next one. And this will continue to happen for the simple reason that it is not bound by proper fundamentals in terms of business, customers, and revenue, but all other things ancillary to it. So I think unless that is there, this will continue to kind of drift that way. So again, there are obviously practical opportunities for people to play, but I think please do your appropriate research and talk to people before you kind of get it.
Sure, and it's a good point. From FICCI as well as from our companies, we don't have any specific stance, and this is more for a technology discussions. And great points, Rama.
Dr. Alok, can I add?
Yes, please. Go ahead.
Yeah. So, you were talking about energy consumption with Bitcoin and things like that, and inclusivity and stuff. So I just wanted to touch upon those things. First of all, it's true. There is it's a tremendous amount of energy being consumed with Bitcoin, and because of the proof of work that has to be executed. And that's where central banks are coming in and saying, hey, why don't we just have a digital currency, right? The CBDC, central bank digital currency. And so then that could be in sort of a permission private regulated space, and you could still use it, and users can come in, like, they can log into the system and utilize the currency. So that's one flavor of it. In the public blockchain space, as long as traceability is there, I think people will be okay with it. But scalability is still a problem, as Professor Das mentioned. And so if you move into a CBDC kind of flavor, permission system where there's a digital currency and it's not fluctuating a lot, it'll help in digital transactions. So that's the other side of the spectrum. And, both may coexist, but it'd be interesting to see.
Yeah, thank you for bringing in that energy efficiency or also CBDC. We didn't get enough time. I mean, 90 minutes have passed by to even get into some of these cryptocurrency part of it. And CBDC as a centralized, banking system could be a way to go from current system to CBDC and then maybe to a full cryptocurrencies. But I'm sure that can be another discussion topic someday. And today, let me sum it up because as we are running out of time, three important things that we talked about broadly. One is, all these elements, algorithms, they have been there and we are putting together distributed systems, finding verticals, applying it wherever it is suited. Second thing, we looked into the trust part of it, and trust in a broader sense, not just security, but really who owns and everything, what we did in steganography, watermarking. There are lots of stuff that are there, and maybe we can sum it up into that. And the third thing in this whole IoT journey, the automation comes into play, and therefore things like smart contract plays a central role to glue this, to make it happen. And if we can implement it right through your own implementations, through open source, other public, that'll be great. So great to have you all. Thanks, Vicky, for organizing this session and giving me the opportunity to interact with all these distinguished panelists. It has been my pleasure. Thank you all for listening also with rapt attentions. A lot of speakers asking questions, answers, but also attendees have put forward their thoughts. So thank you again for this opportunity, and we would keep discussing on this exciting topic.
Yeah, thank you very much. Yeah.
Thanks, Alok.
Yeah.
Nice meeting you all, Dilip, Ashok, and Rajesh.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.
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 Okay, bye everyone. Thanks all.
Nitin, over to you.
Yeah, hi. Thank you, sir. Thank you for sharing the insights on the blockchain. And thank you all the panelists for sharing the insights on the blockchain. And thanks to all the participants for attending the session. Thank you, sir.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.